In November 2025, Johannesburg, South Africa, made history in a way that resonated far beyond its borders. For the first time ever, an African city was chosen to host the prestigious G20 summit, drawing the eyes of the world to the continent. For Africa, this was more than just another high-level meeting. It was a powerful declaration of leadership, ambition, and a rare opportunity to shape the global agenda from an African perspective. The G20, representing the world's largest and most influential economies, is a forum where decisions are made that impact billions of lives across the globe. Johannesburg's selection was a clear signal of Africa's rising influence and its readiness to take on a greater role in addressing urgent global challenges, from economic growth to security and sustainability. South Africa, as host, aimed to spotlight the unique needs and opportunities of developing nations, especially in the fight against climate change and the pursuit of sustainable development. But controversy soon erupted. Just days before the summit, the United States announced it would not attend, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and casting uncertainty over the event's outcome. The absence of the American president left a critical seat empty, raising tough questions about the G20's unity and the future of global cooperation. Despite this setback, President Cyril Ramaphosa pressed forward with an ambitious, climate-focused agenda, determined to keep the summit's momentum alive. The summit became a true test of international cooperation, in a world increasingly divided by politics and competing interests, challenging leaders to find common ground. In the end, Johannesburg's story was one of defiance, leadership, and a bold vision for the future. An African city stepping confidently onto the world stage, determined to make its mark. The U.S. boycott of the G20 summit was unprecedented, marking a dramatic departure from decades of American engagement in global affairs. The decision sent shockwaves through global diplomacy, leaving allies and rivals alike scrambling to interpret the message behind America's absence. President Trump's administration cited two main reasons: alleged persecution of South Africa's white minority, a claim widely debunked by international observers and human rights groups, and a fundamental disagreement with the summit's climate-focused agenda, which the U.S. argued was at odds with its own economic priorities and energy policies. South Africa strongly denied the accusations, calling them baseless and damaging, and insisted that the summit's focus was on urgent global challenges, not domestic disputes. The U.S. rejected the summit's emphasis on climate action, arguing that it unfairly targeted American industries and threatened jobs at home. The administration also opposed proposals for increased financial support to developing nations, viewing them as burdensome commitments. This clash wasn't just about policy differences, it was about the G20's very identity and purpose in a rapidly changing world. The U.S. saw the group primarily as an economic forum, not a platform for climate solidarity or social justice debates. With its objections ignored, the White House confirmed that no senior officials would attend, leaving a symbolic empty chair at the table and a clear message of dissent. The absence of the world's largest economy cast doubt on the summit's effectiveness and raised questions about the future of international cooperation. The boycott highlighted deep divisions on urgent global issues, from climate change to economic inequality, and exposed the fragility of consensus among world powers. The rest of the world now faced a critical question: could they move forward and find common ground without the U.S. at the table? Johannesburg became a proving ground for global cooperation beyond American leadership, testing whether unity and progress were possible in a new era of uncertainty. South Africa seized its moment as G20 host, stepping onto the world stage with a bold vision for the future. Determined to make a difference, the nation put climate change and sustainable development front and center, urging the world's most powerful economies to act with urgency and ambition. President Ramaphosa's agenda was clear and uncompromising, built on 4 pillars, 3 of which directly addressed the escalating environmental crisis threatening our planet. The first pillar, preparing for climate disasters, floods, droughts, and storms, that devastate vulnerable nations and leave millions struggling to survive. South Africa called for the creation of robust global funds, so the poorest countries can recover, rebuild, and adapt to a changing climate, rather than being left behind. The second pillar, financing the transition to green energy. South Africa urged wealthy nations to step up, providing not just promises, but real technology, investment, and support to help developing countries leapfrog to clean energy. The just energy transition was framed as a matter of fairness and shared responsibility, emphasizing that no nation should be left behind in the global shift to renewables. The third pillar, ensuring Africa benefits from its critical minerals, like lithium and cobalt, so essential for green technologies, from batteries to solar panels. South Africa demanded not just fair prices, but also local economic benefits, jobs and opportunities from resource extraction, so African communities can thrive. This agenda was a powerful call to end exploitation, empower developing nations, and create a more just and equitable global system. By shifting the G20's focus, South Africa challenged the status quo, demanding that climate justice become a central issue for all. The world was forced to confront the realities of climate justice, recognizing that the fight for our planet's future must include everyone, everywhere. Despite the U.S. boycott, the G20 pressed on. On the eve of the summit, envoys reached a breakthrough, a draft leaders' declaration. This document, the summit's main outcome, included strong language on climate change, defying years of U.S. resistance. With the U.S. absent, the remaining members forged a bold consensus. The process set a new precedent. The G20 could act even if one member refused to engage. The draft's details were closely guarded, but its message was clear. Climate action could not wait. Leaders from Germany, France, China, and India united behind South Africa's vision. The G20 was ready to lead, with or without the U.S. The world watched as a new dynamic in global governance emerged. The summit's outcome would shape the future of international cooperation. The U.S. lashed out after the G20 agreed on a declaration without its input, calling the move shameful. American officials accused South Africa of breaking the G20's tradition of consensus. The diplomatic rift became public, exposing a complete breakdown in communication. South Africa initially tried to keep the door open, but the White House confirmed the boycott was final. Tensions escalated over a symbolic gesture. The U.S. offered to send a lower-level diplomat to the G20 handover ceremony. President Ramaphosa's office rejected the offer, refusing a token presence after the boycott. The image of an empty chair captured the crisis. South Africa, backed by other G20 members, stood firm. The host nation prioritized the summit's integrity over hollow gestures. The standoff underscored a new era of assertiveness from the global south. The world took note. Africa would not be sidelined. The G20, minus the U.S., formally adopted the Johannesburg Declaration, a bold commitment to climate action. Free from U.S. opposition, leaders reaffirmed support for the Paris Agreement and pledged urgent emissions cuts. They promised financial help for developing nations to adapt and transition to clean energy. The declaration also addressed debt relief and fairer global economic systems. Multilateralism and international cooperation were at the heart of the document. For South Africa, it was a moment of triumph, proof the G20 could act decisively without its most powerful member. The world saw a united front determined to tackle the climate crisis. The 2025 G20 summit marked a turning point for Africa's global role. For the first time, Africa led the conversation, not just participated in it. Johannesburg's agenda put climate justice and fair resource trade at the top of the world's priorities. President Ramaphosa's leadership, in the face of U.S. opposition, won respect across the continent and beyond. The summit's focus on critical minerals and economic empowerment addressed long-standing grievances. The Johannesburg Declaration offered hope for a new, equitable partnership. Africa's narrative shifted, from a continent defined by struggle to one of innovation and leadership. The summit's success boosted African diplomacy and influence. The message was clear. Africa's voice is essential in shaping the world's future. The world could no longer decide its fate without Africa at the table. The Johannesburg summit's drama sparked debate worldwide. Some feared the U.S. absence would weaken the G20, but others saw an opportunity for new leadership. With the U.S. sidelined, the remaining members acted boldly, setting a new global agenda. The successful adoption of the Johannesburg Declaration proved the G20's resilience. The unity of 19 nations sent a message. Multilateralism is alive. The summit set a precedent. Consensus is ideal, but not at the cost of paralysis. The UN welcomed the renewed spirit of partnership. The G20's actions raised questions about the power of a single nation to block progress. The world showed it could move forward, even if a superpower steps aside. Leadership can now come from anywhere, not just traditional powers. The summit redefined what global cooperation can look like. Johannesburg became a symbol of a new, more inclusive world order. The 2025 Johannesburg summit will be remembered as a turning point for the G20. It exposed deep divisions but also revealed a surprising capacity for collective action. The U.S. is set to host the next summit, but trust has been shaken. The climate commitments made in Johannesburg set a new standard for future meetings. The unity of the 19 members has created momentum that will be difficult to reverse. South Africa's leadership proved that developing nations can steer the global agenda. The G20 may become more balanced, with developing voices gaining equal weight. The summit was a stark reminder of the urgency of the climate crisis. The Johannesburg Declaration charted a new course. The challenge now is to turn words into action. The world's future depends on walking that path together.